I really was not happy with my body. I was not happy with the way that I was eating. I was not happy with my health. I kind of like swung to the other side of the pendulum. I knew for probably 2 years that I wanted to lose weight, but I felt so awful admitting it. I felt like I would get canceled. I felt like I would be a poor eating disorder therapist. Weight loss never works. You're just going to gain it all back. And it's like, how disempowering is that for people who genuinely want to change their life in some way?
Hi, and welcome back to Wake Up with Natalie Rose, the channel that helps you think less about food in your body and more about truly living. Today's episode is a little different. I'm sitting down with Alegra Kastens, OCD and eating disorder therapist, who has also recovered from both, to talk about her weight loss journey after recovery. And I know that might raise some eyebrows because I usually talk about body acceptance and body neutrality, but this episode is really about something that often gets left out of that conversation, which is nuance. Recovery and body image healing have become so black and white. Diet culture on one end, anti-diet culture on the other hand, with very little space for the complexity of real lived experience. And that's what we're here to highlight today, is that messy, meaningful middle ground, the one that actually helps us move in the right direction towards true intuitive eating and body trust. That being said, if you are in active eating disorder recovery, I want to lovingly encourage you to skip this episode, because the last thing I would want for you is to walk away thinking, okay, I'll recover and then I'll lose weight. I believe it's not only okay, but it's necessary to take weight loss completely off the table when you're working through an unhealthy obsession with weight loss until you get to a healthier place. If that's where you are, that's not just valid, it's wise. But if you're at a point where you're curious about how body image healing can include conversations about weight, or you're someone in a higher weight body wondering what healthy weight loss could look like and how to navigate that without falling back into extremes, this episode might really resonate with you. So let's get into it.
Yay.
Hi, Allegra. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. How's it going? You're based out of LA?
Based out of LA. I moved end of January, which I'm so happy about. Like, moving from New York was the best decision that I could have made. But I'm working on my book right now. And while I'm so grateful and it's the most wonderful thing, it is also very stressful. So it's just a stressful chapter of my life, but also an amazing chapter of my life.
Yeah. I can't even imagine writing a book. I mean,
It's
like, you
so
must have
hard
to have so much discipline to sit down because you can't just wait till you feel like writing. You kind of have to just do it regularly, right? Or
No, it's exactly it. And I love, like, at the beginning, I was like, oh, I don't feel like I can get into it right now. And then when you're on deadline, it's like, there's literally no other choice. I just have to sit down and push past that and hope that something comes out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you. That's really exciting.
Thank you.
Does it come out?
So it is going to come out in the fall of 2026.
Okay.
Yeah, the book has to be like totally done by November 1st of this year. So right now I'm on the second draft of the draft, if that makes sense.
Yes. Awesome. Well, good for you.
Thank you.
Would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your story?
Yeah. So I am a licensed therapist and I specialize in the treatment of OCD and eating disorders. I have lived experience with both, and that's really what moved me to wanting to specialize in both of those things. I have struggled with disordered eating and eating disorders probably my whole entire life. Like, as a kid, I used to binge a lot. Food was my coping, and I was put on diets like my entire childhood, told to lose weight, told that I couldn't eat things, which obviously the like restrict binge cycle. I ate all of the things that I wasn't supposed to be eating, then some. And then when I got to college, it kind of morphed into anorexia. I started a diet, and it was really just supposed to be a fun diet with a friend of mine in college. And there was never a point where I decided it was going to be an eating disorder, which I know that obviously nobody chooses that, but it really feels like I just fell into it. Like, extreme anorexia, hardly eating, super malnourished, compulsively exercising. Like, I was obsessed with food and body. And I lived with that undiagnosed for, I want to say, a little over a year. And then that morphed, like, I shouldn't even say morphed. One day I had this like sudden and severe onset of OCD, and I didn't know it was OCD at the time because it was unwanted sexual intrusive thoughts and images. Like, literally out of the blue, I started having these like horrifying images of like sexual acts with kids and family members and animals. And it just like changed the course of my entire life. So I went from anorexia into just debilitating OCD. And I do think that, I don't think it's the cause, but I think that being so malnourished probably contributed to how severe my onset of OCD was. And it was the weirdest thing. Like, once the OCD started, I started eating again. I don't know exactly how that happened, but I think my brain could only like be so fixated on one thing. And so when I say like I've never gotten treatment for an eating disorder, like I mean it. At that point I started eating again. Like, I wasn't afraid of food in the way that I was before. It's a very strange thing. So I lived with undiagnosed OCD for, I think it was about 15 months. And finally I got specialized treatment after about 3 years, which is brutal considering the OCD theme that I had. Like, what if I'm a pedophile because I'm having all of these scary sexual intrusive thoughts? And then relapsed again in anorexia, recovered again. And I feel like now I'm at a point in my life where I really and truly recovered with both OCD and eating disorders, which is amazing. I would say I don't meet diagnostic criteria for OCD. Obviously, there's not a cure, but I am at the point where I really I still have intrusive thoughts from time to time, but I'm rarely in a lapse or an episode. Definitely fully recovered from my eating disorder, so much so that over the last year I have been on a weight loss journey, and that honestly has transformed my life. Like, I can't imagine not having chosen that, even though getting to that place and making that choice was very hard.
Thank you for sharing that. I have so many questions. Okay, the first question that comes to mind was, so it seems like you developed OCD after the eating disorder.
Yes.
Do you don't think that the OCD was a precursor for the eating disorder?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really hard because I had OCD symptoms as a kid, but never a full blown OCD episode. I really think that I was biologically and like genetically predisposed to OCD. And I think maybe anorexia was the thing that kind of like set off that biological predisposition. And how those two kind of overlapped for me. Number one, there were obsessions and there were compulsions in both. I thought that the anorexia was 100 million times easier to deal with, so much so that when I had the onset of it and food wasn't as scary, I tried to force the anorexia again because it was so much easier it was a million times easier to be malnourished, to cry about food, to be at the gym at 5:30 in the morning than it was to live with these scary sexual thoughts. But that just puts into perspective like how horrible OCD can be for people.
Oh, for sure. That's what I know about OCD. And the reason I asked that question was because I've had some clients with OCD and co-occurring eating disorder, and it seemed like unless the OCD was treated, like once they started to get a handle on the eating disorder, the OCD, the obsessions and compulsions would just kind of latch on to something else because the OCD wasn't fully treated. Or they had a history of OCD and then it just they started, maybe a diet or an exercise journey and it kind of morphed into the eating disorder. So it's interesting that you had a different experience, but it also makes sense because OCD is often triggered by like an enormous amount of stress. So whether that's mental stress or physiological stress or both, the anorexia was producing for you at that time.
It was brutal. Yeah, for sure.
So you noticed the OCD flared up in kind of like the midst of the anorexia?
Yes, exactly. Like a year into the anorexia, the OCD, I had this like very sudden onset where I went from literally no intrusive thoughts about kids or really anything. I've always adored kids to in that split second, it was like 24/7. I had 100,000 intrusive thoughts a day.
Was there any identifiable trigger? Like aside from the anorexia and your body being so
No.
malnourished and stressed, it just
It's
came on.
wild. Yeah, I think that was a really scary aspect of it for me, is like there wasn't like a gradual onset over time. It's like it really did happen to me. And I think that as I was moving through recovery, a big fear of mine was like, what if it happens again? Because I didn't have any control over that in the first place. It really felt like something glitched in my brain. And then it was like game over for me.
So what did it feel like to, you mentioned like you suddenly started eating again. How did that change the anorexia?
I became less and less afraid of food. And I think because I had relied on food so much growing up as coping, I ate because it made me the slightest bit less anxious about the OCD. Like I just kind of fell back into eating as coping. And I think that eating was a natural kind of exposure therapy for me, where over time I was just less and less afraid of the food.
Right.
And I'm not saying anybody should do this. I think people should get treatment, but like I didn't even really know that therapy existed at that point. So it was just like how it happened.
So you didn't get treatment for the OCD at that time?
No, when I had the initial onset, I think I went 15 months before I started seeing a therapist, and then 3 years before I started seeing like an OCD specialist.
Yeah, that must have been a really scary 15 months.
Oh my God, it was horrifying. It was like the scariest 15 months of my life because I didn't know that it was OCD. I thought that OCD was about sanitizing and checking. I had no idea that sexual intrusive thoughts could be a symptom.
That's true. Even going through school, like becoming a therapist, I learned about that type of OCD just through another student's internship. She was practicing an internship and telling me about it. And she told me that that was the type of OCD that she was working with. But before then, I had never learned about that type of OCD. So that must have felt really, really isolating.
Yeah, no, it was. And then I didn't obviously want to tell anyone because I knew that I wasn't a pedophile. I knew that I wasn't attracted to family members and animals. But when you go to someone and say, I'm having these thoughts, that is what the person fears, is that the other person is going to think, well, you must align with these, even though I didn't. So that kept me from seeking help.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So what did OCD treatment look like for you? Or, you started off with therapy and then an OCD specialist.
Yes.
Did you feel like it was fully treated within a certain amount of time, or what helped you?
Oh, that's such a hard question to answer. I think that definitely within the first 6 months of my OCD treatment, I was noticing a difference in my symptoms. I was definitely not fully recovered, but it was a mix of a couple of different things, which I think I really needed. Psychoeducation about OCD, which I think is so underrated, and some cognitive therapy to help me think differently about my thinking, mindfulness skills training, because I, more than anything, wanted the thoughts to stop. And I would spend so much of my time resisting and suppressing. And I'm not in control of that aspect of my brain. So mindfulness skills, I think more than anything, changed the course of my treatment. And then behavioral therapy. So exposure and response prevention, which my life was one big exposure, like exposure to a feared stimulus, which for me was kids or family members or animals or whatever. So a lot of my work was response prevention, like not ruminating when the thoughts came up, not checking internally to make sure that I didn't like them. And I would say it took a few years before I felt like, wow, I don't meet diagnostic criteria. It definitely wasn't in that like 6 months or a year. I got a lot better for sure. But I do think it took time even just to heal like the emotional impact that it had on me. That's not to say that people don't get better in 6 months to a year. Like I absolutely did, but I would say it took longer than that for me to feel like really steady in recovery.
What was the hardest part of that journey? Like, did you ever feel any resistance towards certain types of therapies like exposure and response prevention?
Oh, yeah. Like some of the exposures that we did, I was like, this is not working. Like, I do not like this. And my therapist would pivot, which is great. And not like, of course, who likes exposure? If someone's afraid that they're going to, I don't know, get sick by touching a doorknob, obviously they don't like touching the doorknob. But for me, some of my exposures were like, this just like does not feel like it's good for me. So that was definitely hard, but I really think the hardest thing was just living in my brain. Like none of treatment was harder than what I was already doing every single day of my life. And so I think the hardest part was accepting and really coming to terms with in therapy, like, I'm not in control of these thoughts and images arising. My therapist is not going to be able to stop those for me. I'm going to really have to get good at allowing them to exist without paying attention to them. And that was the hardest part, because I really did go into therapy thinking like, you need to get rid of this for me. And naturally over time with medication, especially, it helped. Like, I would say I get like 97% less intrusive thoughts now, but my therapist said, like, I can't take those away from you. Like, that's not what I'm doing here. And that was a really hard thing to accept.
Was medication ever part of your treatment?
Yes. Oh my God. Medication has saved my life and I'm still on it. And obviously medication is person dependent, but I do not think I would be at this place in my recovery without medication. Like, I just think that I have a brain for whatever reason that needs it.
Yeah. And I think that's the case with most cases of OCD, right? It's usually a combination of
Yes.
therapy and medication.
Yeah. And it's not to say that therapy can't work without medication, but sometimes medication really does help a person do the therapy work.
Yeah. Yeah. So after you felt like you had more of a handle on the OCD, you said that you, like, the anorexia kind of came back, or?
Yes. In the midst of like OCD treatment, I fell back into anorexia again. And then really just like recovered again over time by myself by eating more. And I think that that's probably where I went wrong, is not having any kind of treatment, because I didn't like necessarily learn about intuitive eating and things that probably would have helped me not get to the place that I got to, which was like gaining a ton of weight that was not healthy for me. And I really do want to preface this by saying I believe in health at every size. And I believe that, you know, every body is different, but I gained a significant amount of weight that didn't feel good to me. I stopped getting my period, which was insane to me, because it's like I was anorexic and malnourished and didn't get my period. And then I gained excessive weight and also stopped getting my period, which I found out was because I had excess weight. And I know, again, like, this is such a hard conversation to have, because I know that it is person dependent. So I just want to say, like, this is my unique story. This might not be someone else's, but yeah, I recovered a second time. And I think that I don't know, I got to a place where I really was not happy with my body. I was not happy with the way that I was eating. I was not happy with my health. I kind of like swung to the other side of the pendulum. And I knew for probably 2 years that I wanted to lose weight, but I felt so awful admitting it. I felt like I would get canceled. I felt like I would be a poor eating disorder therapist. I was told so often, especially by nutritionists online, that like are thin white women, like losing weight is bad and you shouldn't do it. So I really didn't listen to myself until I got to the point a year ago where I was seeing endocrinologists because I wasn't getting my period. And one of them said to me, like, at this point, I think you qualify for bariatric surgery. And that was like a very hard thing to hear. And I think he probably shouldn't have said that to me. But in truth, like, maybe he was right. And I finally came to, I guess, like, for so long, I just believed that I was healthy and that I could be healthy where I was at in my weight. And I had a friend who's a doctor, and she kind of explained it to me kindly, like, gaining weight can impact your hormones, which can impact menstruation. And that's a big deal to me, because like, more than anything, I've wanted to be a mother. Like, that's what I want more than anything in life. And so I was really scared not getting my period. Like, I was going sometimes 4 months at a time without it. And so I was seeing a dietitian at the time who was an intuitive eating dietitian. She said, I won't help you lose weight. I just don't do that. You know, like, my homework was like, eat a bagel, eat pancakes. I'm like, girly, I've been eating the bagel and pancakes. Like, that's what got me to this point. And I was just like, you know what? I have nothing to lose. I'm just going to like do what feels best for me, even though I feel like a total imposter. And I started seeing a dietitian who has helped me with weight loss in a very healthy, intentional way. Like, I don't even call it a diet. It's just changing what I eat. I've lost like 30 something pounds. My period is regular now, which is insane, because now I get it like almost to the day, which I haven't had that in like so long. And I am happier mentally and physically than I have been, honestly, in years. And it's really wild, because I know that like I used to believe, and I used to say all the things like changing your body is never going to change how you feel, and you don't need to lose weight, and stop wasting your life doing this. But I have to say, like, doing this over the last year has changed my life in such an amazing way. So that was very long-winded.
Yeah, no, thank you. Again, I have so many questions. Where do I begin? Were you ever given a diagnosis for not having a period at a higher weight? Like, a lot of people have diagnosis of PCOS, and I'm not an expert, but it seems to sort of happen. Actually, no, it happens to people in all sizes. But were you ever given a diagnosis?
That is such a great question. I thought I had PCOS because I was like, I don't know why I'm not getting my period. I don't know why I'm not gaining weight. So I went to 2 different endocrinologists. I had like a transvaginal ultrasound to look at my ovaries, or I don't know, whatever, uterus. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but no, I didn't meet the 3 pillars. I didn't have any of the, I'm not like a specialist, so I don't know, but I didn't have like facial hair. I didn't have my testosterone levels weren't high. So I didn't meet that. My lab work didn't show that. Like, it was basically just excess like weight gain. And so second endocrinologist, again, like they said it could be PCOS, but like, again, like it didn't meet like the 3-pillar thing. And I remember my dietitian saying to me, like, maybe you're just someone who can't lose weight. And I think people who have PCOS are often told that. So I never had a doctor say explicitly, like, you are not getting your period because you've gained weight, or like, I didn't get a diagnosis per se. But as I lost the weight, I got my period back. And I have to believe that those 2 things are correlated,
Yeah. So I want to dig deeper into that. I've, for a while, have believed that losing weight and changing your behaviors are kind of 2 different things. Like, changing your behaviors can result in weight loss, but is it the behavior change that improves how your body or your hormones are functioning? Or is it actually your body fat percentage decrease?
I think it was body fat.
You know what I mean?
I think it's body fat. Yeah, I do. I think that having that excess body fat impacted my hormones. I think it shot up a certain hormone level. And I think that, and I say excess for me, I don't even like using that word excess, because like, what is excess? But I think in the same way that when someone is, and actually my dietitian has, I don't know, like diagnosed me per se, like we've talked about this medically, but I think in the same way that like when I didn't have enough fat on my body when I was anorexic, that contributed to me not getting my period. I think that having excess fat changed my hormones and led to that. So I don't think that it is behavior change per se. I think it's a little bit of both. I'll say that. I think it's both. I think it's probably changing the way that I'm eating. Maybe it's changing my movement, but I really also do think it is fat loss, which I know is like, it's such a hard conversation to have. And I even like am worried that you're judging me right now, but I would say that if I'm being perfectly honest, I think it's fat loss. Yes.
Yeah, no, but it makes sense. It's just like,
it makes sense scientifically,
because not having enough body fat creates problems.
Yeah.
And having too high of a body fat percentage can create problems. And that's kind of like, we were always told one side of the story. And that's why I think fatness is so demonized, where it's like people believe body fat is wrong and skinny is always right. Like, you can't exercise too much. You can't be too skinny, but that's not true. We just haven't been shown that side of it. And I think that maybe that's why, like in eating disorder treatment and intuitive eating spaces, like they've amped up the volume on that side of things with it, and then kind of like started denying the other side.
That is, I mean? Like, you literally just described it perfectly. The way that I speak about it now is like, diet culture harmed me, but anti-diet culture also harmed me. And I get it. Like, we live in a world in which there is so much anti-fat bias. We live in a world in which thin privilege exists. Like, that is so true. So I understand people in especially the eating disorder world being very loud about that. It makes a lot of sense. But I think then there tends to be an ignoring of people's very real lived experience. And like, just the little bit that I've talked about this online, like I've had people say, I really want to thank you for talking about this. Like, I I had someone in my comments say, like, I gained 100 pounds and it's really impacted my joints and my knees. And then you have other people coming into the comments going, that has been debunked. Like, your body is not hurting because of that. And it's like, how are we denying people's lived experiences now? And also, how are we denying science, you know? And so I do think that a lot of the times things have like swung to the other end. And that harmed me very much so as well, because I knew what I wanted and needed to do for years. And I didn't do that because of everything that I was told online and everything that I kind of regurgitated because I just thought that that was like the right thing to do. But I also want to say I was not in an active eating disorder when I started pursuing this. So I would not recommend this for someone who was in eating disorder treatment. Like, I'm very clear with my clients. If you are struggling with an eating disorder, like, weight loss is off the table. But where I've kind of shifted a bit is like, if I have a client who comes in and desires weight loss and wants to do it in a healthy way, I'm not going to look at them and say, no, that's bad. That's wrong. Because, like, who am I to say that? You know, like, losing weight in a healthy way was one of the best things I could have done for myself.
Yeah. So, okay, a couple of questions that come to mind are, one, do you ever feel like some people are at risk, even if most of their symptoms are gone from the eating disorder, or like their OCD is well managed, and then they want to embark on a weight loss journey? Do you ever feel like they're at risk of relapsing?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I hear clinicians saying, like, once you have OCD or once you've had an eating disorder, like, you can never go back on a diet. And I guess that's one of
Oh my God, I love this question. Okay, this is such a great question. So there's a couple of pieces of this that's important. The first is absolutely. Like, if you have an eating disorder history, it is so important that you work with someone who understands. And my dietitian also specializes in working with people with eating disorders. So she very much so has that background. And I don't like to call what I'm doing a diet. I think that when we think about diet, we think about restrictive. Like, I eat all day long. I've just changed the way that I eat. So I've changed my diet, but I'm not restricting. Like, I eat carbs, I eat bread, I eat desserts, I eat like, so I think that that's another piece of it is like, whenever I talk about being on a weight loss journey, people say, you're just back in your eating disorder. And so I get that we have to be careful of people falling back into an eating disorder, but I also think people in recovery from an eating disorder are not a monolith. And we also can't say just because you've had an eating disorder, you can never pursue something that makes sense for you. Like, we just can't be so black and white. And I unfortunately think that diet culture versus anti-diet culture is so black and white, when the reality is, like, there's a lot of nuance. And if I didn't pursue that nuance, I would probably be miserable right now. Like, I can't even believe where I was a year ago as opposed to where I am now.
Yeah, that's incredible. When I first started learning about intuitive eating, when I was still kind of on my journey, because I also never received any formal eating disorder diagnosis or treatment. I kind of just like started heavily restricting in my teens, which turned into binge eating, just like kind of the natural response. And then
Of course,
the back and forth for a while. And then I kind of got into like the holistic sort of like orthorexia type grounds, because my mom had cancer and she was seeing a naturopath and they put her on this really restrictive diet. So that kind of opened the doors to that. And then I just kind of stumbled across intuitive eating, that space, after getting like really heavy into like toxic wellness side of Instagram, and stumbled into the anti-diet space. And it was just like a refreshing, like, what really struck me were some of the myths, the myth busting, like, of, okay, I used to think all processed foods were bad. And then they were kind of like, well, you know, quinoa is processed, right? And then I was like, oh, like, I thought quinoa was this like health superfood. And so it helped me kind of just get a little bit more of a neutral perspective on food. And then I just kind of started introducing foods that had become off limits. And that was really it contributed to my life because I had met my partner and then we could order pizza together, and I, got used to that and wouldn't like freak out and feel guilty. So I kind of just started healing my relationship with food. It helped in that sense. At the same time, I was finishing up my master's as a therapist and decided I wanted to specialize in helping people with disordered eating and body image. So then I started following more like eating disorder treatment dietitians and things like that. And I think that's where I started seeing that other side of things, where it all of a sudden, like, it was wrong to, first of all, to use the word obesity. And
Right.
I understand that obviously, like, people who live in larger bodies or who have struggled with obesity have received so much mistreatment. So just that word alone is painful for them. I think like that's what I understood from that. But I honestly didn't know that it was a bad word because what I was studying still used the terms obesity. I guess what I'm saying is I found myself in sort of what felt like extreme territories where you weren't allowed to talk about sort of seeing being at a higher weight as unhealthy anymore. It was sort of like I was getting the message that you could be healthy at every size, which is
just not right.
True.
Absolutely. And I think that is that's part of that, like, black and whiteness is part of what kept me from not doing what was best for me and what was best for my health. And again, like, that is not everybody. I want to make it so clear, like, this really is unique. So what I'm speaking to is myself, but I wasn't healthy at my size. I just wasn't. I wasn't mentally healthy. I wasn't physically healthy. And like, I am healthier now that I have changed my behavior, changed what I'm eating, and that I have lost weight. And I think that is such a hard thing to talk about because of the extremism, for sure. And there was something else that I was going to say. I also think this idea that wanting to lose weight is bad, I just don't believe that anymore. I don't know. I think that, and again, it's hard because, of course, when you're sitting in front of someone with active anorexia, like, that's a different conversation than sitting in front of someone who was at the place that I was at. But I felt such like a loss of autonomy my entire life with my body. Like, I was constantly told growing up to lose weight, and I was put on diets, and then I was anorexic, and then I gained a ton of weight in recovery. And for once, I finally feel like I have autonomy over my body, and it feels so damn good. And I don't have shame anymore in saying that. And I think that anti-diet culture felt like a loss of autonomy to me, almost in the same way that diet culture did. Diet culture was you have to lose weight at all costs. Anti-diet culture was you can never pursue weight loss, or you're back in an eating disorder, you're a bad feminist, you're a bad eating disorder therapist, and something is wrong with you. And it's like, can we find the middle ground? And I also think this idea that weight loss never works is just not, it's just not accurate. It just isn't, like, I've done it in a way that is slow and over time. Like, the 30 something pounds has been over literally 12 months, and it works, and I'm happy, and I'm eating, and I'm nourished. And I think for so long I bought into this, like, that I see in anti-diet culture spaces, weight loss never works. You're just going to gain it all back. And it's like, how disempowering is that for people who genuinely want to change their life in some way? It's not true, but it's also so damn disempowering. And it's like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Lizzo gets shit on for being her size. Then she loses weight, and it's fuck her. Why is she losing weight? It's like, you can't win.
You can't win. And I hate admitting that about anti-diet culture because, like you said, nothing is all good or all bad. There's always a middle ground, and they helped me so much.
Yeah.
But I have to admit that they have planted that seed in my brain. Like, that weight loss is never going to work. Like, you're always going to go back to the original size. And I get that is the case for so many people, but I think it's because when you restrict so heavily, you develops the opposite, which is binge eating often. Or if you're engaging in behaviors that are unsustainable, like, you're going to swing back,
of course,
and then you're going to gain the weight. So restrictive diets won't work, but
that's exactly it.
Right. So it's like they're kind of pinning weight loss or putting it all together into one box. Whereas, like you said, there are healthy ways to lose weight, and then there are unhealthy ways.
Right, that are sustainable. And that's what I'm doing. Like, again, if you were to look in my pantry right now, like there is bread there. Like I eat everything. I just eat differently. I've learned how to eat. I've learned about macros. I just have learned how to eat in a way that I should have when I was in eating disorder recovery, first and foremost. But also, I never really did intuitive eating. I think I thought that what I was doing was intuitive eating, which was kind of just like eat whatever sounds good. And I think that that is what online we see, like just eat the donut, just eat the ice cream, just eat when there's so much more to intuitive eating. It's about listening to your cues and like there is a space for gentle nutrition. But I also think like, I don't know how to say this. I don't know that intuitive eating will ever work for me because it's like, yes, of course, if given the option, I'd like to eat pizza 3 times a day, but like, that's just not what is best for me. And so I would say that I'm eating intuitively now because I've kind of like, my body enjoys the things that I'm eating, but I never fully aligned with like, eat the ice cream and eat the this and eat the that, because I think that's kind of how I got to the place that I was at, which was not healthy for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's so hard to express that nuance over Instagram. Like when you just eat the cookie, it's like, I get what they're saying. I really, really do. Because there are so many times where I just needed to not be afraid. Like,
oh yeah,
you know, when you think that having one cookie is going to radically change your body, but then also it's lacking that side of it where it's like, it's also okay to not eat the cookie if you don't feel like eating it, or
yes, or even if you feel like eating it, saying, like for me, for instance, like, yes, I would love a cookie right now. And I have these goals of mine. And it's not that I can't eat cookies. I just don't eat cookies every single day like I used to. And that's also okay. Like that doesn't make you a morally bad person.
Yeah.
And it's improved my health. It just has. And I think it's a hard conversation, but it's an important conversation.
Yeah.
And by the way, I literally just went to Handles and had like ice cream over the weekend. So when people are like, you're in an eating disorder, I'm like, you guys, like, come on. No, I'm not.
That's the thing. Like you can't
stop telling me that.
You can't like portray every part of your brain on Instagram. That's why what I eat in the day really struggle. I mean, I haven't posted those. I maybe did one on TikTok recently because I was like excited about my food or it looks like a fun video to make. But like I avoid making those videos because even though like everyone loves them, because every day is different. Like when you really do tap into intuitive eating or you really have a healthy relationship with food, like one day you might want a few cookies and the next day you might say to yourself, like you said, yeah, I kind of want a cookie right now, but it just doesn't make sense for me today. And it's hard to portray that in a way that it's always going to be interpreted by the viewer based on whatever lens they're looking through. Like if they're struggling with restriction, if they're struggling with binge eating. And I've struggled in those
in both.
Too, so I can like even just picture what they might think about that. So yeah, it's hard to really talk about the nuance on Instagram. And I think that's where a lot of controversy happens.
Well, you do. And then I literally had someone comment and tell me that I'm like an unethical therapist for talking about this. And like, I've been shit all over by some people for talking about this. And it just is like, how wild to me that like me living an authentic life that feels good to me and sharing that, because I do think that there are some people who need my story. I don't think it's for everyone. And I always say, like, if this doesn't make sense for you, turn it off, don't listen. But like for the people it makes sense for, it's helping. And it just, I've been like roasted for talking about this. And it's like, how is that helping anyone either?
It's not a reflection, because I think that you conveyed your story so eloquently, so well, so clearly. I mean, that's the reason why I wanted to chat with you today, because I was so intrigued by your story, and none of it felt unethical or wrong in any way. So it really just goes to show that, we're always perceiving things based on whatever we're going through in that moment. So the people who have given you shit for that are really struggling, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I get that. Like, I think I needed to go to the other extreme, even to heal my own relationship with my body. I needed to like not hear about weight loss. I needed to get angry at diet culture just to kind of like heal that part of me before I moved into a different area, which is just kind of being open-minded about all the possibilities.
And I agree. I absolutely needed that too. And like, I used to be someone who looked at it through my own lens. Like, I remember when I was recovering, I think the second time from anorexia, I went to lunch with someone and I knew she'd been in eating disorder recovery as well. And she ordered a salad. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, she's not in recovery. She's ordering a salad. And it's like, now I look back and I'm like, she just wanted the damn salad. You know, like not everything is eating disordered, but when you are in that lens of you have been restricting, you think that other people are. And and I needed all of that too. I'm so glad that anti-diet culture exists. I really did have to stop moving my body and eat all of the things. Like, I do think I had to get to that place, but staying at that place and that extreme for me was just not healthy. And I feel happier having lost weight. And I think I used to believe that body image is fully internal. And I just don't believe that anymore. I just don't. I think that for me, part of it is the external. And I think that that's okay too.
Well, I wanted to ask you about how body image fit into your story. Like, did you did you struggle with body dysmorphia? Did you have body image issues like from a young age? What was your experience with body image? How does that fit into your story?
Yeah. I definitely struggled with my body my entire life, like growing up in childhood. The thing is, like, I was a kid of like the 90s, 2000s. So naturally, I was like the fattest thing to ever exist, even though I wasn't. Like, I look back at pictures and I was a normal sized kid. But to my parents, I was like 800 pound, like my 800-pound life. And that's how I was treated by them. So I very much struggled growing up, always feeling like the fat kid and the fat girl in high school who never had a boyfriend because I was, you know, fat and ugly. Like, that was how I perceived myself. And when I was anorexic, I definitely knew that I was losing weight, but there was a lot of dysmorphia there where I canceled I think it was my 19th birthday when people were already at my party. Like, people had shown up to my house and I canceled it because I thought I looked like too fat in my dress. And I was so malnourished, like my bones were sticking out. So there was a lot of body dysmorphia. And then I don't even know if there's like a coin for this, but I've seen people talk about it, whatever. I've seen people talk about this online and I really relate. I feel like there was almost a reverse body dysmorphia when I gained all of the weight. Like, I still looked at myself as if I were thin. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but like, I would go to these stores and I would try on clothes and I'd be like, wait, the 16 pant doesn't fit me. Like, I'm a 10. And it's like, baby, you haven't been a 10 for 4 years. But like, I feel like I had that like reverse almost body dysmorphia. And even I think it was really that doctor being like, you qualify for bariatric surgery, where I kind of just woke up and was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm at this place that I just didn't ever think that I would get to. And now I don't want to say I don't struggle with body image. Like, there are certain parts of my body that like my arms will always be like a thing for me. I don't really like to show my arms. It's something I'm working on, but I think because I've been at both extremes, I'm able to see my body very clearly at this point. And I don't believe that like it's never going to be enough for me. I think because I've been at both extremes, there is a point in the middle that I would like to get to. And I absolutely think that that is going to be enough. And I think that that's one of the myths I bought into is like, well, if I start losing weight, it's just never going to be enough and I'm always going to hate my body. But unless you've been at a very high end where you literally can't shop at stores anymore, like I couldn't even go to Zara. And that's like a different kind of experience. Like, I was living in New York and couldn't buy clothes at stores. Or you've been at the other end of the spectrum where you're anorexic. Like, it's hard to know what it's like unless you've been at those extremes. And I'm happy now in my body, but I think that when I get to that middle ground, like, I don't think I'm going to struggle with body image. I think it's where I want to be. And I think that I'm going to be really fucking happy to be there, especially because I did it for myself and I have that autonomy.
Yeah. I mean, you could struggle with body image if you hadn't done any of the internal work. Like, it sounds like you've done so much work on yourself and your mental health. Like maybe, yeah, just losing weight without having done any of that work, maybe like the anorexia would pop up again in some way, or some kind of like obsession. But I think what's missing from that conversation is like, you can lose weight and feel good about that, but also if you have internal body image struggles that are separate from that, then that also needs to be worked on. It's like they can
Absolutely
happen hand in hand.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I really did get to a place of body acceptance for so long. And I think that that did help me in this. Like, I didn't come from I didn't start with, I hate myself and I'm doing this because I hate myself. And I've received that comment from people too, is like, if you're intentionally losing weight, you must really fucking hate yourself. No, I did this because I love myself enough to know that like that path was not good for me. So I think that that's where it's been different this time around, is like, it's healthy and it's coming from a place of, I do love myself.
Yeah.
And this is what I want for myself because I care about myself in that way. And so I think if I came at this like, I'm going to restrict everything and I'm the ugliest person alive, like maybe we'd be having a different conversation.
Totally. And I think that's why it's such a personal experience, because only you can really know how you feel about yourself deep down. Because yes, some people's experience, that is really valid for them, where they are like desperate to lose weight because they hate their body image so much, or because they're really struggling with self-worth. But that wasn't the case for you. You've done a lot of healing work, and you had realized, this actually isn't healthy for me.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, like, I didn't like my body. I didn't. Like, I'm not going to lie about that. But I think that that's okay. And I know that that's like, that's a nuanced thing to say, but I think it was okay for me to say, I want to be able to fit in clothes that I like, and I want to feel differently. Like, my therapist said something that kind of blew my mind. She said, I started seeing a new trauma therapist and I felt like I had to like defend this weight loss journey because I feel like I have to literally everyone. And she said something like, it sounds to me like it was like kind of like a sensory thing for you also. Like, you didn't feel good in your body. Like, it was just a different sensory experience to have gained 120 pounds, which is what I had gained. And I was like, wow, that's a fantastic way to put it. That's like, I'm not saying I hate fat people, which people have also said to me, like, you really hate fat people. And it's like, what?
Oh my gosh.
I don't even like dating thin people, by the way. Like, thin in dating is like not attractive to me. So I'm just like, I can't even go down that road. But it was like a sensory thing, but also I didn't like my body. And I think that I feel better in my body now, having lost the weight and being able to wear the things that I want to. And I'm getting to a place where like, that's okay. I don't think that that makes me a fat phobic asshole, like people say. I think that's just my experience. And I think that a lot of people online are lying to themselves when they're like, you never feel better losing weight. You never like your body more. It's like, I would be lying to everyone right now if I said that I didn't. And like, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. I think anytime there's that extreme language, it's a warning sign, like never or always, because it's just not that way. It's not black and white. And it's not like you're trying to be like a size 00 or like you.
I'm like trying to be like 180 fucking pounds. Like, that's my middle ground. So like, I really feel like, and a number is like, I should say a number is a number, but like, no, I'm not trying to be Kate Moss or whatever. Like, that's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm going for. And I think what frustrated me too is a lot of what I saw online. It was like these thin white women dietitians who were like, weight loss is bad. And it's like, girl, you're literally a size 2. Like, I can't even fit into Zara at this point, and you're telling me that like weight loss is bad and you're like an extra small at Zara. Like, I don't know that you should be the most credible one to talk about my experience.
Yeah. No, I totally relate to that.
It's because like, shut up, Susie. Like, like, you're over here in like a G-string that's a size fucking 000 telling me not to lose weight. Like, who are you?
Yeah. And that's, you know, when you look at it, like I've felt like so much shame the past few years because I feel like I'm one of them. Like my weight gain was still in, like, I still lived in like, you know, a typical size. I didn't receive any discrimination. I didn't have doctors telling me I needed to lose weight. And yet here I am kind of saying like, you know, body image is not really about your body. It's about how you view yourself. And like all of that is true, but it's also true
to an extent, right?
To an extent. And it's also true that I've never lived in a size where it started impacting my health, or I received discrimination, or, you know, was marked. So,
or couldn't fit into clothes, or like literally I was like, oh my God, like I can't even go to the stores anymore. And that's a wild experience, especially after having been anorexic. And obviously I want to say clothing stores should just fucking make all sizes. Like the lack of inclusivity is fucked up. But I do appreciate you acknowledging that, because it just is such a different experience. And I think it's, and it's also just a different experience being in your body, you know, like the sensory experience and what it's like to move around, and what it's like. You know, I grew up an athlete, like I'm athletic, and I don't know. Everything is a different experience when you've actually lived it. So I got so fucking sick and tired of these like intuitive eating dietitians, like eat the donut, and they're like a size 2. And it's just like, girl, I feel like you're missing so much of this. You just don't have that lived experience.
Yeah, it's true. And like from my experience, I guess I can say that it's probably hard for us to talk about because we don't have the lived experience. Like it's hard for me to sort of put a disclaimer at everything and say, oh, but by the way, I haven't lived in a larger body, so I can't speak to that. It's kind of like I can only speak to what I know and the clients that I work with. And that's one section. Like it's, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think that there's a lot of fear. I think that there's a lot of fear that has been
saying the wrong thing.
Yes. Or just saying something that's true. Like that. I've been so afraid of being canceled for talking about this, even just saying I wasn't healthy at my size. And like, it was actually a medical thing. Like the excess weight contributed to medical issues for me. Yeah. I'm like, I've been terrified to say that, because it's like, it feels like you can't. And I think that that's part of it too, is like, it's not just that people don't have that lived experience, but finding the nuance feels like a very hard thing in that kind of extremism. And I think that anti-diet culture can be an extreme, just like diet culture can. And it's hard to be a voice of like reason and nuance in that.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. I won't take up too much more of your time, but I have one more question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on SkinnyTok?
I don't like SkinnyTok. I think it's really fucked up. I think SkinnyTok is fucked up when it's like restriction and you should be eating 3 grapes. Like nobody fucking needs that. Liv, whatever her name is, like get off TikTok, girl. However, so maybe that's what I'm trying to say here. If we're starting at this point, SkinnyTok, when it is like, you know, being skinny is the best thing ever and you're hideous if you're not, and you need to lose weight. So you did it. Like, I do not like that. Yeah. However, I use TikTok as a weight loss tool, and I very much so like it. Like, it has been very freeing for me to, like, I have workouts saved. There are people who I really enjoy who are, you know, they give high protein recipes, and it's really been a tool for me. It's been inspiring to see other people on similar journeys to me who have like done this over a 2-year time span. So no, I do not like SkinnyTok when it's like
Liv Schmidt kind of SkinnyTok.
No, it's horrible. It's extremism. Yeah. Like, I also think that like now any kind of weight loss talk on TikTok has become SkinnyTok. And it's like, I think that people are also allowed to talk about weight loss on TikTok. And I think that it helps some people and it doesn't help others. And if it doesn't help you, like look away or block or mute. Like, I'm such a fan of social media hygiene, but yeah, I would say that I don't find it problematic to talk about weight loss on TikTok unless it's done in a way that is restrictive and fat phobic and awful. Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of like my nuanced answer, if that makes sense.
Yes, but it makes a lot of sense. Like,
yeah, I like TikTok for weight loss, at least for me. Like it's been great when I need like recipes or exercises or
Yeah, of
motivation,
course.
but like I don't follow the like that is not going to do anything for me, you
Yeah.
know?
I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation and kind of tease out the difference between healthy weight loss and unhealthy weight loss,
Yeah.
and just the reality that there can be nuance to this. There can be a middle ground to weight, not just weight loss, but also body image and healthy eating and intuitive eating. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think it's such a helpful reminder for people who, especially those who might be feeling discouraged in their recovery or are scared to reach out to seek help because they're afraid that they're going to be never allowed to exercise again or never allowed to be within a certain weight range. So thank you so much for having this conversation.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. And I just want to end with one thing, and that, like, again, this is so individual. Like, I would never say that my journey is for everyone. I just want to make that like abundantly clear, is that this is my journey and everyone else's will look different. I'm in no way saying that anybody has to lose weight. I don't agree with that. This is just what felt good to me.
Yeah. And your story matters.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again, Allegra. Thank you so much for listening. If this episode resonated with you or even just gave you something different to think about, hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Trust me, you won't want to miss the next episode. One more thing before we go, everything shared in this episode is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional support or treatment. Always reach out to your doctor, therapist, or treatment team if you are needing support and guidance that is specific to you and only you. Thank you, and see you next time.